The moon hung low over the Niger, a silver coin dipped in oil, casting long, trembling shadows across the black water. The river breathed, slow, deep, ancient. It whispered through the reeds, groaned in the roots of the baobab, and pulsed like a sleeping heart beneath the village of Dambara. But tonight the river did not sleep. Tonight it watched. A woman stood barefoot on the bank, her silhouette sharp against the star-strewn sky. Her name was Amina, daughter of the weaver, granddaughter of the midwife, and the only one who had dared to speak the river's true name in 3 generations. Nyame Nwoma, the one who writes on water. She wore a white kaba with a single red thread stitched at the hem, a mark of the chosen. Her hair, once braided with cowrie shells, now fell loose, tangled with river mist and the sweat of fear. In one hand, she held a calabash filled with kola nuts and palm oil. In the other, a knife of obsidian, its edge dulled by time but sharp with intent. The knife had been her grandmother's, the calabash her mother's. Both had been offered to the river before. Both had returned empty. Amina did not look back at the village. She could hear them, the muffled sobs, the prayers, the low chant of the elders. Nyame Nwoma, accept her. Spare us. Nyame Nwoma, take her, not our children. They had drawn lots, they had chosen, and she had not fought. Not then. But now, as the river began to rise, not with the tide, but from within, bubbling, churning, as if something deep below had awakened, Amina stepped forward, her voice cutting through the night like a blade through cloth. I am here, she said, not in the trembling tones of surrender, but in the clear, steady voice of a woman who had already decided her fate. I am Amina of Dambara, daughter of the weaver, granddaughter of the midwife. I come not to beg, I come to speak. The river stilled, the reeds stopped rustling, even the crickets held their breath. Then a voice, not from the water, but in it, as if the river had swallowed 1,000 voices and now exhaled them in unison. It was deep, resonant, ancient, like the creak of a baobab tree splitting in a storm. You are late. Amina did not flinch. You are not the river. You are the hunger in the river, the greed, the thing that takes what it was never given. The water began to swirl. A whirlpool formed, dark and deep, and from its center rose a figure, tall, shimmering, made of water and moonlight and something older than both. Its eyes were hollows filled with starlight. Its arms were long, fluid, ending in fingers like reeds. Its face, if it could be called a face, was a shifting mask of sorrow and fury. I am Nyame Nwoma. I am the memory of the flood, the keeper of the drowned, the guardian of the deep. For 300 years, I have taken a bride every 7 years, and for 300 years, I have been obeyed. And for 300 years, Amina said, stepping closer, you have taken the wrong ones, the kind, the gentle, the ones who loved their people. You took my mother, you took my aunt, you took the midwife who delivered me, and now you would take me, not because I am worthy, but because I am chosen. But I ask you, why? Why a bride? Why every 7 years? What do you want? The river spirit tilted its head, and for a moment the water stilled again. Then, softly, almost sadly, I do not know. I only remember the command, a bride every 7 years, or the river rises and takes all. Amina laughed, a single, sharp sound that startled the night birds into flight. Then you are not a god, you are a slave, a servant to a rule you do not understand, and I will not be another offering to a lie. The spirit's form flickered. You have no choice. The lot has been cast. The elders have spoken. The river has called. The elders are afraid, Amina said, and fear makes men do foolish things. But I am not afraid. I am angry. Angry that you take the women who hold our village together. Angry that you leave the cruel, the greedy, the ones who hoard their yams while children starve. Angry that you demand a bride, a woman, while the men who rule the village sit in their huts, praying to a spirit they do not understand. She raised the calabash. I bring kola, I bring oil, I bring the respect of my ancestors, but I do not bring myself as a gift. I bring questions, and if you do not answer them, then I will break this calabash, spill this oil into the river, and let the ancestors know that Dambara chose cowardice over truth. The river roared. The water surged, crashing against the bank, sending spray high into the air. The spirit's form twisted, its voice rising in a wail that shook the trees. You dare challenge me? I am the river. I am the flood. I am the keeper of the deep. And I, Amina said, stepping into the water, the cold biting her ankles, am the daughter of the woman who taught me to think, and I tell you this, you are not a river spirit. You are a memory, a curse, and curses can be broken." The water rose higher. The village behind her screamed. The elders fell to their knees. The drums, which had been silent, began to beat, slow, mournful, the rhythm of a funeral. But Amina did not look back. She plunged the obsidian knife into the calabash, splitting it open. Kola nuts spilled into the river. Palm oil spread across the surface like a golden wound. And then, in a voice that carried over the wind, over the water, over the centuries, she began to sing. It was not a hymn. It was not a prayer. It was a story, the story of the first woman who had ever been taken. Her name had been Ya, and she had been a healer. The river had taken her during the Great Flood of 1689. But Ya had not gone quietly. She had left behind a mark, a carving on the oldest baobab, a spiral with a dot in the center, the symbol of return. And Amina had found it. She had studied it. She had spoken to the elders who still remembered the old ways, and she had discovered the truth. The river spirit needed a bride, not because it wanted one, but because it feared one. Because every 7 years, the balance of the river shifted. The water remembered the flood. The deep remembered the dead. And unless someone, a woman, offered herself willingly, the river would rise and drown the village. But the willingness was the key, and no one had ever gone willingly. They had been given, they had been chosen, they had been sacrificed, but not Amina. She stood in the river, arms outstretched, voice rising in the old song of Yah, the song of the first bride who had fought back. And then the river answered, not with rage, not with flood, with silence. The spirit's form began to melt, not into water, but into light, a soft golden glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. Its voice, when it came, was no longer the roar of the deep, but the whisper of a child. Yah, I remember her. She did not sing, she spoke. She said, "You are not a god, you are a wound, and wounds can heal." Amina's breath caught. "And what did you say?" I did not answer. I took her, but I did not keep her. I let her go, into the deep, into the silence. And I waited for someone who would speak, not beg, not cry, speak. The light pulsed again. For 300 years I have waited, for a woman who would question, for a woman who would see, for a woman who would remember that the river is not my master. I am part of the river, but the river is not me. Amina lowered her arms. The knife fell into the water, sinking without a sound. Then what do you want? I want to be free. And then the light began to rise, up, up into the sky, like 1,000 fireflies joining the stars. The river calmed. The whirlpool vanished. The water returned to its natural flow, gentle, steady, singing its old song. Amina stood there, soaked, shivering, but alive. And behind her the village was silent, not in fear, in wonder. But this is not where the story begins. This is where it ends. To understand how a woman came to stand before the river spirit and speak to it as an equal. To understand how a village came to fear the river and how one woman came to break the cycle, we must go back. Back to the beginning. Back to the truth. The village of Dambara sat on the edge of the great Niger floodplain, where the river curled like a sleeping python, its skin shimmering with life. The air was thick with the scent of mangoes, roasting plantains, and the earthy musk of wet soil after the rains. The market buzzed every ocean day, the day dedicated to the river goddess, when women brought their wares. Yams wrapped in banana leaves, fish dried on bamboo racks, cloth dyed with indigo and red clay. Dambara was a village of weavers, of midwives, of storytellers. The men farmed the floodplain, but it was the women who held the village together. They wove the cloth that clothed the people. They birthed the children. They sang the songs that taught the young the ways of the ancestors. And they feared the river, not the river itself, the spirit within it. Every 7 years, on the night of the full moon after the first flood, the elders would gather in the sacred grove beneath the oldest baobab. They would draw lots. A woman would be chosen. No one knew why. The elders said it was tradition. The priests said it was the will of Nyamenuoma. But the women whispered, it is because the river is hungry. Amina had been born on the night of the last offering. Her mother, Adwa, had been the midwife, strong, calm, the one who had delivered every child in Dambara for 20 years. But that night, as she labored with Amina, the river had risen early. The flood came not with the rains, but before them. The elders said it was a sign, and when Amina was born, her first cry echoing across the village, Adwoa looked at her daughter, kissed her forehead, and said, "She will be the one who speaks to the river." Then she walked into the water. No one stopped her. No one could. The elders said it was her time. The priests said it was her honor. But the women, especially the weavers, wept in silence. And Amina grew up knowing two things. One, she was the daughter of the woman who had walked into the river. Two, she was the one who would replace her, because the next offering was due in 7 years, and she would be the right age. Amina was not like the other girls. While they played with dolls made of clay and rags, she sat with the elders, listening to the stories of the river, the flood, the spirits that lived in the deep. While they learned to weave, she learned to read the patterns, not just in cloth, but in the stars, in the flight of birds, in the way the river changed color before the rains. She asked questions, too many questions. Why must a woman be taken, she asked the priest one day, as he prepared the sacred herbs for the next offering. The priest, Osei, a man with eyes like cracked river stones, looked at her with something like pity. Because the river demands balance. The flood takes the land, the spirit takes a life, it is the way of things. But why a woman? Amina pressed. Why not a man? Why not you? Osei's face darkened. The river is a mother. It gives life. It takes life. It is female, and so it must be appeased with a woman. But that is not what the old songs say, Amina said, her voice rising. The songs say the river is neutral. It is the spirit that chooses, and the spirit, Nyaminwoma, was once a man. The priest stood. You speak heresy. The ancestors would not have allowed the offerings if they were wrong. And yet, Amina said, the ancestors did not choose the offerings. The elders did. The men did. And what do the men know of the river? They do not fish in its depths. They do not bathe in its waters. They do not listen to it. Only the women do. Osei turned away. You are too young to understand. I am 12, Amina said, and I understand this. The river has not flooded in 40 years, but the offerings continue. Why? The priest did not answer. But Amina did not stop. She began to research. She went to the old midwives, the ones who remembered the time before the offerings became regular. She went to the weavers, who had kept the old songs in their loom patterns. She went to the drum keepers, who knew the rhythms of the river. And slowly she pieced together the truth. The offerings had not always been every 7 years. They had started after the Great Flood of 1689, when the river rose higher than any living person had ever seen. It drowned 3 villages. It swept away hundreds. And when it receded, the elders of Dambara gathered and consulted the oracles. The oracle, a blind woman named Nanaya, spoke in riddles. The river is angry. It remembers the flood. It remembers the dead. It will rise again unless it is given a keeper, a woman, a bride, one every 7 years when the flood memory is strongest. And so the tradition began. But Nanaya had also said something else, something the elders had ignored. But if a woman goes willingly, not by lot, not by fear, but by choice, and if she speaks the truth to the river, then the spirit may release the village. For the spirit is not a monster, it is a memory, and memories can fade. The elders had dismissed it. Willingly? They scoffed. No woman would go willingly. And so they made it by lot. They made it sacred. They made it unquestionable. And the women, out of fear, out of tradition, out of love for their families, went. But Amina was not going to be given. She was going to go. And she was going to speak. The years passed. Amina grew into a woman of quiet strength. Her hands, like her mother's, were skilled. She could weave a pattern so fine it looked like water flowing through cloth. But her mind was sharper. She studied the river's tides, its moods, its silences. She learned the songs of the fish, the calls of the birds, the way the wind changed before the flood. She also learned to listen, not just to people, but to the unspoken. She noticed that the elders feared the river more than the spirit, that the priests profited from the offerings, receiving gifts, land, respect, that the men avoided the riverbank, while the women, especially the weavers and midwives, loved it. And she noticed something else. The river had not flooded in 40 years, but the offerings continued. Why? Because the fear remained, because the power remained. because the men who ruled the village did not want to lose control. One night, as Amina sat by the river, weaving a new cloth with a spiral pattern, the same one Yah had carved on the baobab, her grandmother, Mama Essie, came to her. Mama Essie was the last of the old midwives. Her hands were gnarled with arthritis, but her eyes were sharp as obsidian. "You are preparing," she said, sitting beside Amina. "I am," Amina replied, not looking up. "You think you can change it?" "I know I can." Mama Essie sighed. "Your mother said the same thing, the night before she walked into the river." Amina stopped weaving. She knew the tradition, she knew the fear, but she also knew the lie. The elders said the river spirit was a god, but it was never a god. It was a memory of the flood, of the dead, of the pain, and the only way to break a memory is to speak to it. Amina looked at her grandmother. Then why did she go? Because she had no choice. The lot was drawn. The village demanded it, and she loved them too much to let them suffer. But you have a choice. You can go willingly. You can speak. You can break the cycle. Amina's hands trembled. "And if I fail?" Mama Essie smiled, a slow, sad smile. "Then you will be the last, and the river will rise, and Dambara will be no more. But at least it will be your choice." She reached into her basket and pulled out a small, wrapped bundle. "Your mother left this for you," she said. "When the time comes, give it to her." Amina unwrapped it. It was a knife of obsidian, its edge dulled by time, but still sharp with memory, and wrapped around the handle a single red thread. "Your grandmother's," Mama Essie said, "the one who carved the mark on the baobab, the one who spoke to the river." Amina held the knife. It felt right in her hand. "I will go," she said, "but not as a sacrifice, as a speaker." Mama Essie nodded. "Then you must prepare, not just your body, your mind, your heart, and your story." The night before the offering, the village was in chaos. The elders had drawn the lot. It was Amina. The women wept, the men prayed, the priests chanted, but Amina did not cry. She walked to the sacred grove, where the elders and priests were gathered around the baobab. "I will go," she said, her voice clear, "but not as a sacrifice. I will go as a speaker. I will take the knife, I will take the calabash, and I will speak to the river." The head elder, Kofi, stood. "You cannot change the ritual. The spirit demands obedience." "And what if the spirit demands truth?" Amina asked. "What if the spirit is not a monster, but a memory, and I am the one who can heal it?" Kofi's face twisted. "You are defying the ancestors. And you," Amina said, "are using them. You have kept this tradition not because it is sacred, but because it keeps you in power. The river has not flooded in 40 years, but you still demand a bride. Why? Because you are afraid of change, afraid of women who think, afraid of truth." The priests began to chant, louder, faster, trying to drown her out. But Amina raised the knife, the obsidian blade catching the firelight. "I will go," she said, "but I will go my way. And if the river rises, it will be your fault, not mine." She turned and walked away. No one stopped her. The next night, the full moon rose. The village gathered on the bank, men, women, children. The elders sat in silence. The priests beat the drums, slow and mournful. The air was thick with incense, with fear, with the scent of rotting mangoes. Amina stood at the edge of the water, dressed in white, the red thread at her hem, the calabash in her hand, the knife at her belt. She did not look at the village. She looked at the river, and then she stepped in. The water was cold. It rose to her ankles, then her knees, then her waist. The current tugged at her, but she did not fight it. She walked deeper until the water reached her chest. And then she stopped. She raised the calabash. "I am Amina of Dambara," she said, "daughter of Adwoa, granddaughter of Essie. I come not as a sacrifice, I come as a speaker. I bring kola, I bring oil, I bring the respect of my ancestors, and I bring questions." The river stilled, the drums stopped, the village held its breath, and then the water began to rise, not with the tide, but from within. The whirlpool formed, the spirit emerged, and Amina spoke. She spoke of her mother, of her grandmother, of the women who had been taken, of the lies that had been told, of the fear that had been used. She spoke of Yah, of the carving, of the song, and then she sang. The song of the first bride, the song of the woman who had remembered. The river spirit listened, and for the first time in 300 years, it answered. Not with rage, with recognition. "You," it whispered, "you are her blood." "I am," Amina said. and I am not afraid. The spirit's form flickered. I have taken so many, but none have spoken like you. None have sung the old song. None have remembered the truth. Then let it end, Amina said. Let the cycle break. Let the river return to its natural flow. Let the village live without fear. The spirit was silent. Then softly, but what will I be? Amina smiled. You will be free. You will be memory. You will be story. And stories, they do not need brides. They need tellers. The spirit looked at her, really looked at her. And then it nodded. The light began to rise. The river calmed, and the spirit, Nyame Nwoma, dissolved into the stars. The next morning, the village awoke to a river that flowed gently, quietly, as if nothing had happened. The elders were silent. The priests were confused. But the women, the weavers, the midwives, the mothers gathered at the bank, and they sang the song of Amina, the song of Yah, the song of the woman who had spoken. And from that day on, no lot was drawn, no woman was taken. The river did not flood, and Dambara thrived, but the elders did not forget, and the priests did not forgive. For Amina had not just broken the cycle, she had exposed them. She had shown that the river spirit was not a god, it was a memory, and memories, they can be rewritten. One night, a group of elders and priests met in secret, deep in the forest. We cannot let this stand, Kofi said. The people will begin to question, to think, and when people think, they stop obeying. Then we must remind them, said Ose. We must restore the fear. But the spirit is gone, another elder said. It vanished. Ose smiled. Then we will create a new one. And so they began to whisper. They told stories of the river rising in other villages. They claimed the spirit had not left. It had only hidden. They said Amina had angered it by breaking the tradition. And they began to prepare. For the next ocean day, they would perform a new ritual, one that would restore the fear, one that would control the village. But they did not know that Amina had heard them. She had been walking in the forest, gathering herbs, when she saw the firelight through the trees. She listened, and she understood. The river was safe, but the village was not. For the real spirit, the one that needed to be appeased, was not in the water. It was in the hearts of the men who ruled. And so Amina made a decision. She would not fight them with fear. She would fight them with truth. She returned to the village and gathered the women. We must speak, she said, not to the river, to the people. We must tell them what happened, what the elders are planning. We must break the silence. The women hesitated. They will call us witches, one said. They will exile us, said another. They will kill us, whispered a third. Amina looked at them. And if we do nothing, they will control us. They will take our daughters. They will steal our freedom. They will lie to our children. Is that what you want? Silence. Then Mama Essie stood. My granddaughter is right, she said. The river is safe, but the village is not. And if we do not speak, the fear will return, and the offerings will begin again. One by one, the women stood, and they sang the song of Amina, the song of Yah, the song of the speakers. And the next morning, the entire village gathered in the market square. Amina stood on the old baobab stump, the one with Yah's carving, and she spoke. She told them of the spirit, of the memory, of the lie. She told them of the elders' plan, of the fear they had used to control, and she told them of the truth. The crowd listened in silence. Then my sister was taken last time, he said. I always thought it was the river's will, but now I think it was theirs. Another stood. My mother was a midwife. She was taken when I was 10. I never understood why. Now I do. One by one they stood, and they spoke. The elders tried to stop them, but the people turned on them. Not with violence, with questions, with truth. And the elders, Kofi, Ose, the others, had no answers. They were exiled, not by force, by shame. And from that day on, Dambara had no more offerings, no more fear, no more lies. The river flowed, the women wove, the children played. And every ocean day, the village gathered at the bank, and they sang the song of Amina, the song of Yah, the song of the woman who had outsmarted the river spirit, not with magic, but with truth. But the story does not end there. For years later, when Amina was an old woman, sitting by the river weaving a cloth with the spiral pattern, a young girl came to her. Grandmother, the girl said, why did the river spirit really want a bride? Amina smiled. Because, she said, it was lonely. The girl frowned. But it was a spirit. And spirits, Amina said, are just memories. And memories, they need to be told, to be remembered, to be loved. The spirit was not evil, it was hurt. It was trapped in the pain of the flood. And it thought, like all hurt things, that it needed to take to feel whole. But what it really needed was to speak, to be heard, to be forgiven. The girl thought for a moment. So, the river spirit was like a child? Yes, Amina said, a child who had forgotten how to cry. A child who thought the only way to be loved was to demand it. But love is not taken, love is given. And sometimes to break a curse, you don't need a sacrifice. You need a conversation. She looked at the river. And that, she said, is the lesson the elders never understood. The river did not need a bride, it needed a friend. And I was the first one who was brave enough to listen. The girl nodded, then ran off to play. Amina watched her go, and she smiled, because the river was safe, the village was free, and the story, her story, would be told. For generations. Moral: the greatest power is not in sacrifice, but in truth. The deepest curses are not broken by force, but by understanding. And sometimes the most dangerous spirits are not in the river, but in the hearts of those who fear change. The river flows on. The story lives on. And the women of Dambara, they speak, always. If this tale stirred your soul, if the river's whisper still echoes in your heart, subscribe to African Haven Tales. For more stories of courage, wisdom, and the ancient magic that lives in every village, every river, every woman who dares to speak. Subscribe now and let the ancestors' voices guide you.